If you divided up the inhabitants of my imaginary river basin based on how they reproduce, you would get 3 groups. Men who are not affected by the magical infertility zone in any way, aristocratic women who can reproduce normally thanks to their access to the queens, and peasants who reproduce by giving birth to clones of themselves. But the dividing line between those last 2 groups is much thinner than the aristocratic women would like it to be. An aristocratic woman has access to the queens and thus conceives children the normal way, and an aristocratic woman is an aristocratic woman because she conceives children the normal way. There is a wealth and power aspect to it all, but an aristocratic family is not necessarily a very wealthy one, and if you handed a fortune to a peasant, she will carry on being a peasant, because she can only reproduce by giving birth to a clone of herself, which means that she is not an aristocratic woman, which means that she is not entitled to have any access to the queens, and she cannot become an aristocratic woman. So if a woman gets kicked off the having access to the queen's wagon, there is no way back on. The queens don't really go around turning peasants into not peasants out of the goodness of their hearts. From the queen's point of view, if someone is a peasant, then that is rightfully so, and there is no justifiable reason to upset the natural order of the world. But while upward mobility is not a thing, downward mobility is very easy. Let's say you are an aristocratic woman who belongs to the poorer aristocracy. The waiting list to get to meet the queens is long, and you don't have the social contacts necessary to get you ahead of everyone else. Others are pulling on such contacts, so you might find yourself in a situation where the waiting list is at a standstill because everyone meeting the queens is being funneled into their presence ahead of the waiting list. If you are the youngest woman in your family, and all the other women either reached menopause without ever meeting a queen, and thus were unable to have children, or they had children but those children died, and you are now the only woman of childbearing age left, if you don't have children, that's the end of your family. You can allow your family to go extinct, and have your neighbors divide your land amongst themselves, or you can cheat. The queens spend a few hours every day imbuing wooden tokens with a power that makes anyone who wears that token for a month or so to become pregnant with an exact copy of themselves. Those tokens are distributed among the aristocratic families, who then distribute them among their peasants. So an aristocratic woman could take one of those tokens for herself and become pregnant like a peasant does. But if you reproduce like a peasant, then you are a peasant, and so is the rest of your family. You are all off the aristocratic wagon, the neighbors can come in and divide up your land, and you can spend the rest of your life farming. But it's not unusual for a daughter to resemble her mother, so you all can just tell everyone that this is exactly what is happening. But if your family is on the brink of dying out and you suddenly have a daughter who looks exactly identical to you, that's going to look suspicious. And since your neighbors will get to divide up your land if your family loses it, they will be very happy to tell on you. Even if your daughter is not a clone at all, and actually just a daughter who looks like you, there might be people who will not pass up the land grab opportunity if you are already poor and badly connected. So aristocratic women very much prefer it when their daughters resemble their fathers. And the less powerful they are, the more anxious they are about the thin dividing line between them and peasants, and the more they insist that a peasant and an aristocratic woman are two fundamentally different types of human being, with nothing in common between them at all, and manufacturing completely arbitrary differences, such as banning peasants from wearing certain types of clothing. And it's all a little funny, because a daughter looking exactly like her mother is a very different thing for peasants. When they have more than one daughter, they often choose to swap one of them for another peasant's daughter, usually from very distant villages. And those swapped daughters then grow up and have children in their new homes. while the daughter who remained with her mother grows up and has children in the original village. So if you are a peasant woman, you'll have women who are genetically identical to you, scattered all across the basin. All those women are your sisters, no matter how many generations ago the child swap might have happened, and if one of your sisters arrives in your village, you have to treat her as you would treat a sister, feeding her, housing her, and clothing her if need be, which means that peasants have very wide networks of support they can turn to if there's a natural disaster or a crop failure. And it's a common thing for peasants to boast about how they have a sister in every village.